His argument is this. He has this argument regarding manners. Why are manners so important to gentility, to the aristocracy? And his argument is this. Manners are practices that require cultivation, require the investment, a big investment of time. You cannot achieve manners and habits of life, without investing a lot of, wasteless energy on them. For that reason, manners testify that you have leisure time, you have a lot of leisure. If you have manners, you have leisure. And what it testifies also through this is that you have wealth or power. This is the ordinary, presentation of Veblen. What I want to point to is a certain very important trait that usually is omitted from this explanation. Because Veblen always, in all his arguments, he adds one seemingly little addition, but if we look at it carefully, we see that it traverses the whole argument. What he says is that this mechanism of display of wealth can function only of the premise that it is unrecognized by the subject themselves. I mean, the subject who studies manners, who displays manners, who is polite, who has manners, can only treat them as if they're physically valuable. He studies manners, he practices manners only on the premise that he doesn't perceive them in their economic meaning. He cannot perceive them as a display of his wealth. He can only practice them if he treats them as something which is in itself. Veblen's terms for this are very, very strong. He says that for the aristocrat, manners are mandatory. Furthermore, he says something like, not something like, his specific phrase it, that they are seen as an integral feature of the worthy human soul. It's a very strong phrase, an integral feature of the worthy human soul. And I think that it is no coincidence that such a sublime qualification appears here. Because what Veblen shows us is that the sublime is the other side of the fact that the economic cause is missing. It appears sublime because it cannot appear in its explicit economic meaning as a display of wealth. That is why, because its economic cause is missing, it appears sublime. So this does not relate directly to money. In fact, the word is mentioned in this book only once, 4 pages before the last. And even at that time, it is within the expression waste of money. This is the only occurrence of the word in the book. But it gives us a similar historical ontology to the Marxist one. That the economic entities exist insofar as they efface their past or efface their meaning. I mean, the fact that manners are somehow preserved, moved from generation to generation, this fact has an economic meaning, but precisely this meaning is what keeps this institution alive, the institution of manners. So in a way, we see here a similar historical ontology to the Marxist one. I can think that I would like to think that we can integrate those theories, because while Marx shows us how money represses its past, and he deals with new money, with the abject nature of new money, Veblen allows us a different historical perspective. All his work is dedicated exactly to old money, yes? And what is repressed itself? It is money is what is repressed in order to give all these practices of display their economic function. And there
You have to stop.
Okay.
Short.
Okay, so I will not arrive at Freud's second, which is very important, second explanation for the identification. I will just take one point from Veblen. And this point is that, Veblen teaches us something which is, I think, true also of Marx, but is more explicit in Veblen. Veblen treats the economic not as a specific subject matter. There are no economic things, but what he tells us is that there is an economic outlook, an economic perspective on things. Things like manner can be studied in a whole set of disciplines, and what it shows us is what is the economic study of manners. And what is specific to this perspective is precisely the fact that the economic perspective of things studies them in the farthest away from their immediate meaning. That is at the heart of the argument. Yeah? Manners can function insofar as the subject does not perceive their meaning. And I think that in a way this is true also of Marx. Marx also shows us how the economic perspective is radically foreign to the everyday, to the immediate perception of things. And just one sentence, just to try to tie things up. So we can say, to return to Freud and Ferenczi, psychoanalysis shows us how, with social demands, the interest in feces is repressed, and feces are replaced by some other object. And both Veblen and Marx, what they show us is that the money object is the most typical object whose social meaning is repressed. It is social as so far as it's, in a way, it embodies the social as radically foreign to the everyday experience. And I think this quite completes the picture.
Thank you very much for your stimulating paper. Three very brief points. The first is I'm very thankful for the first part, because I never were convinced by Freud's thesis of the relation between defalcation and money collecting. The second is, there was a question in the audience after the first lecture about the relationship between critical theory and simile, and it is quite clear that critical theory is a hair of Marxist thinking, and so one can see that there is some sort of incompatibility between Simile's view of money and Marx's view of money, because there is an ambivalence in Simile, but he would say that to some extent money is a form of empowerment of the individual to organize in a modern society itself. In contrast, you mentioned that money and in special capital from the very beginning in Marx has this repressive aspect. And the first question I would try to formulate is, has this to do with the history of the money, with the ursprüngliche Akkumulation of the capital, of the original accumulation of the capital, which cost 1,000 and 100,000 people in the process of colonization? Is this contingent, for example, or is it a part of the structure of the capital? Or with other words, what is, to bring it on the point, what is really the repressive structure in money? And that is my question.
Okay, regarding Simmel, as I said earlier, I think what Simmel takes to be a pathology of money, from a critical point of view, is money. And I think that Simmel is somewhat aware of it. He talks about this, tendency of means to become end. Money is the means to everything, and there is at least a tendency for it to become an end. Because it, touches everything, it becomes valuable. So he is aware of a certain pathological nature inherent in money in this sense, which, from a critical point of view, it's a very basic.
But there are also some positive things. He says it's very scandalous for Marxists that money is a communist medium, for example, or it is a peaceful thing, or it is a generator of women's liberation, or something like that. This is a very positive.
But I think that the principal question is, what status do we give to pathology?
Okay.
What status do we give to pathology? Is it the critical point of view is based on the assumption that the pathological is normal? And pathological is, this is very strong in Freud also, yes? And in this respect, Zimmel is very close to critical theory because he does see this connection between the pathology and normality.
Okay.
And regarding the question about history, I'm not talking about the history of money, but about the historicity of money.
Okay.
And it is a little bit a different question, the historicity.
It is,
how it is a historical thing. How is history present in it? Yes. How is history inscribed in it? The manner that history is inscribed in it, and it's not the same as the question: what is the evolution of money? How it came into being? But how is its history inscribed in it? And in this respect, Marx gives a very, and I think also Veblen gives us a very explicit account that the specific historicity of money, whatever is its history, its historicity is the fact that its history disappears when it vanishes in it.
Okay. And this would be the repressive aspect?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
This is, as I said, this is
in a Freudian sense, nearly.
Okay. I would just ask your forgiveness because I have to take questions in English only. My German is not enough. I don't know enough German to.
But if you have, I would try to translate it so you can put a question into German, and I'm not a perfect translator, but I try to do my best. Yeah. Okay.
Thanks for a very interesting talk, and what I want to share is kind of a reflection that I'm not very sure of, and I would like to know what you think about it. We have a tendency, certainly Marx, a tendency to assume that there is a Rousseauian natural state before the fall, before we committed the original sin in which we were authentic. The tendency is very strong. Now, when I look at a theoretical approach that you haven't mentioned because it's not part of your talk, the approach in which basically in evolutionary psychology we use the same game theoretical approaches to try to understand mating behavior in ducks, in humans, and the behavior of the stock market. I sometimes wonder whether our tendency to look for how did money corrupt us is an attempt to avoid the very uncomfortable fact that humans, by the way of being part of nature, are part of a Darwinian logic, and that this Darwinian logic works in all aspects of our lives. In saying this, I feel kind of uncomfortable myself. I grew up with the Frankfurt School in my veins, and I just wrote a book called Critique of Global Unreason, in which I tried to show how I'll talk about this afternoon, how certain ideologies that have evolved have caused trouble for us, but yet I do think that they're simply a function of technological innovation, but that the logic that drives cocks to compete for this particular hen and the other way around is in the end not fundamentally different, and that we would just like there to be a paradise before the sin, but it really hasn't existed from the time of amoeba onwards, and I'd really like to hear what you think.
Okay.